Hello, everyone. Welcome, friend, and welcome to today's episode of Transform Today. I'm your girl, the Black Joy Goddess, or Black Joy for short. Just don't forget the black. And I'm your coach here to help you transform your pain into joy, like I did for myself. So, on today's episode of Transform Today, we are going to be discussing boundaries. Boundaries. So, boundaries are so necessary, especially with the world feeling like it's on fire or literally being on fire in some places, our political climate with COVID, it can feel really difficult to maintain our energy or even have the energy to like get simple tasks done and stuff like that. But I have a simple trick to help prevent burnout from happening, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. I actually created a handy dandy worksheet to help us set and enforce boundaries. So, if you are interested in learning how to do that, make sure you stay tuned till the very end, and make sure you stay tuned as well if you to learn how to receive support around that as well. Hello, Chrissy. Thanks for joining me today. Okay. Um, so yeah. So pulling up my notes right now. Okay, so I'm gonna be doing. I know I normally do the two options today, but Spirit really just told me to just focus on how to set and enforce boundaries. Like everybody needs this message, so yeah. So it's just this one message today. Okay, so so I know boundaries can to some people can be kind of like a big deal or can sometimes even seem like a taboo or a deal breaker in some relationships. Like some people are like, oh, boundaries, don't know how I feel about that. But when you are healing, it's so necessary to have and enforce boundaries. There's a saying that you can't heal in the environment that you got sick in. And that's so true. Sometimes that requires you to physically like remove yourself from the situation, but other times it requires you to go in internally to look at your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, and get curious and change that environment so that you can begin to see that reflected externally in your life. I've said this before and I'll probably say it again and again and again, but before you can create something externally, you have to be able to create it internally. So what does that mean? So in order to have boundaries like in your relationships and in your life, you have to go in and create these boundaries with yourself. And you are the creator of your reality. So let's create some of these boundaries that we are needing in our lives. Okay. Um, yeah. So something else, I often hear a lot of people say that they have a hard time saying no and that they're a people pleaser, so they don't really know how to set boundaries and they don't want to feel like a bad person and etc. etc. Um, but just like you can put in that energy of telling yourself, like, oh, I can't do this. Just imagine what would happen if you put in, if you were just as passionate as believing in yourself and trying something new. What would happen? Let's get a little curious about that. You know, you make choices every day, and a lot of, for some people, the default choice is to just like people please and do what we believe other people want to do. But we can choose to make a different choice at any time in our life, and that's what I'm going to help you with today, because I've been a people pleaser most of my life, but I've noticed that the situations where I continue to choose other people and their well being over myself, those relationships feel very strained and draining and tiring. And, you know, at the end of the day, it always leads to burnout. Um, yeah, and I don't know about you, but I don't really like being burned out. It feels really difficult to be present in my life and even maintaining these relationships, you know, just because you're giving other people everything that they want doesn't even necessarily guarantee for the relationship to work out. So, the best way to maintain a relationship is to be your authentic self and be honest with yourself about what you need and what you don't need in a relationship. You know, you have to teach people how you want to be treated. Okay. So also, you know, the thing about boundaries is that people people can't take advantage of you without your permission. So what I mean by that is that the way that you respond to situations, that teaches people things. So when you change the way that you respond to something, um, that will change how other people respond, and they will learn, they will become aware of the things that you are willing to tolerate for yourself and the things that you are not willing to tolerate for yourself. Hey, Amber, thanks for joining me today. Um, yeah, and eventually, when you begin to heal your trigger, boundaries become less necessary. Yeah, you can heal your wounds, and eventually, these walls begin to fall down, and yeah, boundaries become less necessary over time. And before I get into these examples, the last thing that I want to say about boundaries is that it's important for us to be intentionally selfish. You know, I often hear like a lot of people uh, talking about how important it is to be selfless. And while it is important to be selfless, like it's even more important to have this balance between selflessness and selfishness, because if you're constantly just living your life for other people, like you're not living your life. You know, you have to be willing to do what's best for you so that you can be present in your life and fully engaged in your relationships. You know, you got to be yourself. Okay, so be intentionally selfish. Make sure that you have time for yourself. Make sure you have time where you're not constantly taking in energy or taking in information, because that's really exhausting, and that's how we often end up feeling burnt out. Yeah, so just making sure that you do have alone time um, throughout your day where you're just enjoying your own company, allowing yourself to decompress without worrying about how what other people are thinking, saying, or doing, or how they feel about you. Because at the end of the day, like, yeah, you have to do what's best for you. You have to you are the most important person in your own life. So treat yourself that way, Treat yourself every day to some alone time. Um, yeah. And next week I'll also be discussing more about the stress cycle and how to end that stress cycle in your body. But today we're focusing on boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. Okay. So that brings me to my worksheet that I am so proud of, that I have titled How to Set and Enforce Boundaries. And this worksheet was inspired by the book One Lesson Away, which was written by my mentor, Milani Shani. And in it, she talks about different life lessons that she's learned throughout her time on Earth. And this was inspired by chapter 21, which is Boundaries Reduce Breakdowns. And yeah, it's super, super powerful and transformative book. And I will put the information about where to buy this book down in the description box below. Okay, so back to my worksheet. Okay, so first I am going to start with the 5 steps that you can take to begin to create boundaries in your life. And the first, these are different questions that you can reflect on. So it would be really great if you just got like some paper, like in a journal or something. You can actually email me if you are interested in receiving my copy of this so that you can do it in your free time. And I'll put my email, blackjoygoddess@gmail.com. Okay, so the first step is to get present. And the reflection question that I have here is, what's bothering me? Because before you go try and fix the problem, you got to get present to the problem, figure out what it is, and then go from there. So the second step is to get curious. And the question that I have there is, what is, or where does this trigger come from? And I'll go over this and then we'll fill in the blanks here so we can see how to make a boundary in real life, in real time. Okay, number 3 is to clear the old belief. What am I afraid of happening? Number 4 is to create a new belief. What do I want to happen? And number 5 is to practice the new belief. How can I create this for myself? Okay, so I have 2 examples here in my handy dandy chart on my handy dandy worksheet. So the first example that I have here, the trigger is, I hate when people are late. I love to rhyme, but I hate when people are late. Okay. So the source so that answers the first question, get present. What's bothering me? My friend was just late. We've been planning to have lunch together and she was late and I'm upset. Okay. So the source, I'm sure your friend being late to your lunch date, I'm having a lot of fun rhyming. I'm sure your friend being late to your lunch date wasn't the first time that you ever felt upset about somebody being late. So you gotta get a little curious, like, oh, was it last time that she did this? No, I don't think this was the first time. Was it a month ago when somebody else did this to me? No, you gotta keep digging deeper, deeper, deeper until you feel like you got to the source of this trigger. So for an example, I have, after you keep digging, the example of the source could be, my parents would always be late picking me up from school, which made me feel unimportant or like they didn't value my time. Ouch. Um, yeah, so just like continue, and it may not, the source or the root of it may not come like the first or the second time that you do this or whatever, but just the most important thing is for you to get really curious about it, like, why am I so upset when people are late? Yeah, so something to figure out over time. So the next square that we have right here is healing. So in this, oh, is this backwards? It might be hard. No, no, it's not. Okay. My camera is like really small, so it's hard to see. Okay, so so the next square is healing. So in this box, we are just going to create a new belief. Um, yeah, what do I want to happen? It's step 4. What do I want to happen? So creating a new belief, I wrote some affirmations here. And one is I value myself and I meet my loved ones when our schedules align. So it's just kind of like a reminder to yourself, like my friend being late, they aren't late because they don't like me or they don't value my time. We all have a friend, or we might be that friend that shows up late, but it's we just have to remember that it's not with any malicious intent. But if it does bother you, that's why we're here, to learn how to set these boundaries. So setting the actual boundary, that's our next column here. It's right here. Boundary. So an example of how to set a boundary when somebody's late, before the situation happens or before it happens again. So an example that I have here is if somebody is late, I'll wait X amount of minutes. And after that, I'll reach out to them, um, and I'll reschedule when then I can like reschedule and leave. So just an example, um, let's say you get to the the restaurant that you're meeting your friend at for your lunch date, and they're late. Let's say they're like, okay, I'm gonna wait 10 minutes and then I'll call her. So these 10 minutes pass by and she's still not here. You haven't heard from her. You call her, you're like, hey girl, where you at? And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm stuck in traffic. It'll be like an extra 20 minutes. Is that cool? And, here it's just really important for you to be honest with yourself, and but also make sure you're not like taking out your frustration on your friend. So um you know just ask, like, hey, like, is now still a good time for you, or would it be better for us to reschedule at a later date? And your friend might be like, actually, I haven't been stuck in traffic. I've been at my house this whole time. I was really tired. Like, yeah, I would love to reschedule, um, or your friend could be like, no, like, I really am on the way. I'll be there in 20 minutes, like, if you are willing to wait. And then that's really just up to you to decide, because you could, if you're pulling up to a restaurant to eat with your friend, you're probably hungry. So it'd be like, okay, well, I might just go ahead and order me an appetizer. Or if you really do have to go, like you have to go back to work or something like that, just be like, okay, we're going to reschedule. So, the specific situation is going to depend on what's going on, but what's most important is what's best for you. Can I, um, would it be best for me to reschedule? Would it be best for me to just go ahead and eat without her and carry on with my day? Or, just really assess, like, what is best for me in this situation. But it's not about what your friend is or is not doing, it's about how you are responding. And don't just say, like, don't just continue to tell somebody like, okay, yeah, yeah, it's fine. I'll just continue to wait and be hungry and not eat any breadsticks because you're not here with me yet, and that's rude. Just be really honest about what you do and you don't want and act accordingly. Okay? And then just the final column that I have here is the consequence of not enforcing your boundary. So this is just a reminder for you. So the example that I have here, the consequence of not enforcing your boundary is I feel angry with my loved one for wasting my time and I feel unimportant again. So to avoid feeling like that, to avoid feeling angry or like people aren't appreciating you, set your boundaries, speak your truth, ask for what you want from your friend so that, it's not anything personal. Um, and sometimes it may take your late friend a while to understand the impact of them being late on you. And, sometimes it might take you a little bit to learn how to speak your truth to this person. But yeah, you just got to keep practicing until it feels right and it feels comfortable. So, so that's just one example of how to set and enforce a boundary where it's you getting present to what you're actually feeling and acting accordingly to create a situation where you are present to your feelings and you are asking for what you need and you are acting accordingly. Okay. So the second example that I have is reading the news triggers me all day. This is very relevant trigger living in the United States of America during the election time. So for this one, this one isn't really anything that involves another person. This is just like for you, your own like belief and practice. So the source of this, just an example, is like, why do I feel like I even have to check the news all day long? So the source is, I feel like I have to, this is just an example. The source, I feel like I have to constantly check in to be a well-informed citizen when the news is stressful. So that's just something to get really curious about. Like, is that true? Do I have to constantly be on my phone reading news articles, being on social media, and all that jazz to feel like I'm tuned in and connected? Um, it's a no in my book, but for somebody else, they might feel differently about that. Just find what feels right for you. So the healing around that affirmation is my well-being is most important. The information I seek finds its way to me. So just shifting your belief around that. You don't have to say or do anything that doesn't feel right for you. So if being on social media or reading the news all day stresses you out, you don't have to do it. So for an example of a boundary for that, um, one of the things that I love about one of my favorite features on my phone, on my iPhone, is that you can set a time limit for different applications. So I do that with like pretty much all my social media apps because it's really easy to just get sucked in and just be scrolling all day long and taking in information. So, an example of a boundary that you can set with yourself to ensure your own well being is I will set a time limit on my news app or social media app for 15 minutes a day. And when I tell you this boundary has like really shifted my entire life, it's just like yeah, it did that, honey. It did that. Okay, and then the consequence of not enforcing this boundary when you're on social media all day, when you're constantly getting news notifications, the consequence of that is just feel burned out, stressed out, and just like, yeah, just tired. So, so it's just really important for you to be present to how you're feeling, what stressors are present in your life, and how you can show up differently for yourself and respond to them differently so they're not ruining and like controlling your life. So those were the two examples that I have. If you email me at theblackjoygoddess@gmail.com, I will send you a copy of this for the free skis. And yeah, it has two little rows, but I have a worksheet that has more than two rows for those of you that need it. And yeah, so we can begin to practice setting boundaries in our own life so that we don't feel burnt out and that we can be our bestest self. So, yeah, let me know what y'all think about this exercise about setting boundaries and how you feel about it. And if you do need support around creating support for yourself through boundaries, you can email me at blackjoygoddess@gmail.com so we can schedule a session and I can support you in setting these boundaries for yourself. All right, well, thank you so much for watching today. Just a friendly reminder, if you would, take the time to subscribe to my YouTube channel and give this video a thumbs up. I would so greatly appreciate it. And I will see you here next week, same time, same place. Be great and have a great, wonderful rest of your week. Bye, y'all.